Welcome to the Echo Oscar Delta podcast, where we talk to Navy EOD techs and hear the stories that they want to share. All ideas, thoughts, and statements are those of the guest and the host of Echo Oscar Delta, and not of Navy EOD or Navy as a whole. Today we have Jeff Simons. He did 26 years in Navy EOD, retired as a Lieutenant Commander Select, participated in Earnest Will, Desert Storm, OIF, and been basically all around the world multiple times into Australia, a ton of different mobile units, some units that we'll talk about that aren't stood up all the time, but are pretty cool. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me.
Jared, thank you so much for the invite. Hats off to Tommy Rebus. I have to give him some kudos for recognizing, the Echo Oscar Delta podcast. You were in town, and certainly giving me the opportunity to speak about a few things that are near and dear to my heart, and recognize a few people that were really influential in my career. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I guess to get started, you were kind of, we were talking a little bit before, and you've done a little bit of everything and pretty much everywhere. Mm-hmm. Where would you like to start? It's a hard question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't want to go all the way back to boot camp. Certainly I don't. But, I want to kind of fast forward to what I think is important to me is transition. Okay. And how we transfer all these amazing and unique skills and experiences into the private sector. Yeah. Because at some point that is going to happen. Right. So I've gone through that. I've assisted others. I still assist others. Heck, I'm assisting my daughter. Yeah. Right. Who's just completed 5 years with the US Coast Guard. Nice. Up in Michigan, Lake Superior. And she's ice rescue qualified. Really? Think about that. Right. So it's a passion of mine. It's a mission. But let me just kind of walk it through. Obviously, served 26 years from 80 to 2006. And there were some amazing periods of that, timeline that I'll just highlight. Obviously, from boot camp to EOD school, that's a fast forward went to Orlando. I went in the fourth man diver program. So it was at 5331, but it was the fourth man diver program because there didn't have a whole lot of EOD techs back then. Mm-hmm. This is 80. And boot camp selected, went to HDA school. Okay. Right. Metal benders. Yeah. Firefighters. That was cool. So that was the source rating, whole techs. And there's a few of those whole techs out there, old schools. Yeah. Right? Not DC. Right. A whole tech. So I went to HDA school, then immediately went down to Coronado to dive school, right? Scuba school. And I forgot how many weeks it was, but I think I heard Dwayne, he had a mixed class. So I had recon, I had some submariners in there, and a couple of Navy swabs. Yeah. And I'll get to that in a moment. And we're going through school. I was going to be heading off to a detachment. So back then, you augmented a detachment. You were the fourth person on the dive station, literally. And then, once you made rank, because you didn't go to EOD school as a seaman or a third class, you had to be a second class back then, right? So you had to, cut your teeth in the fleet, learn a skill, be an apprentice. So that was my path until one of those swabs we talked about, Frank Oltree, he got caught looking into a secured area on the far end of NAB Coronado. Okay. And that was a place where we heard, there were dolphins. So Frank says, hey, man, let's go check it out. So he does this night op. He gets caught. So they roll him up. They make him come in the next day to see the commanding officer, who was a SEAL. Uh-huh. And he said, hey, what'd you see? And you can do one of two things. We can pull your clearance or you can volunteer. True story. Yeah. Told Frank, right? Because what you saw, you're not supposed to see. The systems back then were secret. Yeah. And some portions of it were TS. So Frank comes back, he's sweating bullets, and he goes, hey, man, this is what happened. And by the way, he says, if I get one or two other volunteers, I'll get off the hook quicker, right? And I said, no way. I said, it's my life dream. I worked at a Marine Institute when I was in high school down in Florida Keys. I was a Jacques Cousteau fan.
Yeah.
And I said, anything in the water is what I want to do. So
That's awesome.
I literally said, count me in. Didn't know what we were doing. We weren't read in.
Yeah.
And man, that was a quite an experience. So the entire unit, except a few of us, were all SEALs. They were all Vietnam era SEALs.
Yeah.
Okay. Legends. Worked on some very unique programs. And so these are old and bolds. So those are my sea daddies, so to speak, right? So had to earn my fins. I was scraping barges, with my hands, literally, right, with a scraper. Okay, you'll earn your fins. Had no wetsuit. I mean, you earned every piece.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
like
awesome.
going through mini boats, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we integrated. Took a while to gain that trust. Then you're secondary on a dolphin, which is, a living, breathing mammal.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of art, a lot of knowledge required. It's not as easy as cutting and throwing fish, right?
All right.
So fast forward. So again, all of those systems were run by the SEAL teams or the SEALs. EOD steps in. Mobile Unit 3 is commissioned in 83. And now it falls under an EOD mission, right? Because of the mine warfare piece.
Right.
I think the SEALs wanted to get out of that.
Yeah.
But I was with Short Time, which was the anti-swimmer program. And so Mobile Unit 3 is established. I go off to EOD school. Okay. I was in 1B86, right? And so there's a few people in there who may know. Yeah. But anyway, 1B86, come back to Mobile Unit 3. Part of the first MCM team that had Mark 16s.
Okay.
Okay. Didn't know what that was. Yeah. Right. I knew what it was, obviously, but just was employed. We were the first det, and did a lot of MCMXs, all up and down the coast on the old MSOs, the wooden hulled.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we did a lot of that, a lot of time on a rubber boat. And then Earnest Will starts. They deploy the Mark 6 system to protect U.S. assets in Bahrain. And we were the second deployment. It was 6 months before us. We relieved them in situ. The Mark 6 system is operational. And as I had mentioned earlier, we patrolled every night. Yeah. Not one night off for 6 months from sundown to sunup. And it was operational. Yeah, it was on. And we had a great crew. I mean, just amazing. Everything was clicking. Again, another great experience of, opportunity. I was a head trainer because I'd been around, the systems for probably longer than most since the early 80s. Yeah. And our LPO had to go back. I fleeted up. LPO time, got it. And then kind of fast forward a little bit, get back, and then got orders to Australia.
Nice.
So I was on the personal exchange program with the clearance divers. And we have this long-standing relationship with the Aussies. Yeah. We have this exchange program. They send their exchange to training unit. I think they sent one to NSCT-1 but back in the time it was VSW. Okay. So I served on VSW. We'll get there. Yeah. So anyway, 2 years. I'm over there. Started off their RN school. Had to get all my tickets for diving, dive soups, IED soup. Right. You just don't. Had to go to Bandiana. Learned from probably the world's best IED bomb techs at the time. They were all from Northern Ireland.
Okay.
British.
That makes sense.
And they tucked them in there for reasons.
Yep.
Okay. So you learn a whole different perspective of what the idea is and how to defeat it. Yeah. You're just not doing X-rays. You're thinking through why is it here, who built it, and how is it going to go off. And we didn't have bomb suits. We had 60 seconds. Yeah. We had that was our, right? Or maybe less, maybe more, right? You had to go down and do your business. And so it's a Friday. We're 2 weeks from coming back to the States. My wife and I were married. Sydney, Australia was our, or if you will, this exchange tour was our first tour together. Yeah. Amazing. But it was a Friday. We get the call up. We're packing out. And the commanding officer of the team, Russ Crawford at the time, said, hey, would you go? I said, where? Where are we going? He goes, we're standing up Clearance Diving Team 3, and you've been selected to be a part of the team. I'm like, what? why would you do a yank, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason to this. So I thought, oh, this is going to be a deployment. Call up my wife. I said, sweetheart, could you give me my passport number? She had no clue.
Yeah.
So this is absolutely true. It's a Friday. We pack out. We leave Sunday. We left on a Sunday for 6 months. I didn't have comms with my lovely wife for over 2 months.
Wow.
For various reasons. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. Right. We were doing false insertions. Right. The Aussies were there. They weren't there. Okay. So there I am with Clearance Diving Team 3. Desert Storm, cleared 5 ports, and part of a U.S. contingent at the end. Pete Jimenez, his debt, Randy Thurman. Okay, we can go on, but what an experience. So I get back, roll out 2 weeks later, and Training Unit 1 in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And I think you said you did some time in nukes. I was in underwater. I was in nukes. I did chem and really learned a lot. Quite frankly, I think if I could recommend one thing is get to a training unit and really hone your trade crafts. Yeah. Crafts, right? Go move around those divisions because the schools are great. You know, you get to go to schools you don't normally.
Right.
So training unit was a really big, in my opinion, professional development.
Yeah.
That's where I applied for LDO.
Okay.
Right. First and second, time.
Yeah.
Very competitive. Right. I mean, my year groups, right? Kevin Childry. We'll come back to brother Kevin.
Yeah.
Leon Tackett, Mike DeHoyos, and Gunnar Mesa. And, there's a host, and we were all in the same year group. Yeah. What a competitive group, right?
That's awesome.
Somehow I prevailed. And, but I was at Moby Unit 11. Okay. So from training unit 1, I went to Moby Unit 11, got a detachment, right? All slick bombs. I loved it.
Yeah.
And what a great crew.
Mine's ready to be molded.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'll tell you one thing, and I hope each one of those members on that team would resound the same, is, as a chief, I was a chief, my first dad, taking care of your team. So before they got there, I sent them each a form, give them your sizes for everything from shoes and, uniforms. And I literally, would kit out their kit bags. Okay. Right. Because it took months to get gear back then. Yeah. Right. So when they showed up, they had a kit bag with their gear. Right. We were ready to go.
That's awesome.
Right. So that's kind of the, entry into that. But within a year, results came back and I was selected as a Mustang and as an LDO.
Nice.
And one of those members, by the way, and we'll get into this, is what are the amazing things we do in EOD? Entrepreneurs. Yeah. So my OIC, Randy Packard, right, young lieutenant out of school, started a company, and many may recall who it is, and it's R3, right? So
that's awesome.
Yeah, right. So, and there's a few others I'd like to bring up, but fast forward from there. My first tour as an ensign was EOD Moby Unit 5. Then
when you were at Moby Unit 5, was that, I'm trying to think, because was it already moved to Guam, or was it still in the Philippines?
No, good one. So it was in Guam. Okay. And they had taken over that new facility. Yep. Okay. So it was kind of a new facility. We didn't quite have the back piece of property that it has now. Right. But we had the high bays and Foul Eagles. You had a lot of MCMXs, Cobra Golds back then. A lot of bilat exercises. So we were always, in and out of the shop. Yeah, it was good. Good work.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. So Moby Unit 5. From there, came back to the States, Moby Unit 3, R&T. And back then, when I say back then, there was real emphasis in readiness and training. Yeah. Right. Like the Moby units, that was their responsibility. Right. The training units were really the Cardex or whatever we were calling it at that time. It's kind of a finishing piece of that. So big investment, superstars. I mean, superstars. I had Kurt Nelson, Master Chief, right? Rommel Mesa, right? Was there. Gunner, Ron Zitzman, superstars, right? And a host of others, master divers and some of the best parachutists going. Graham Lindsley, rest his soul, was with us. So we had a pretty fully staffed, very experienced team. And we we pulled them in, got their records ready, kind of gave them, many workups, inspections, and make sure they had their gear, boom. And so it was a great investment, great experience. And then from there, I went to VSW, Very Shallow Water Mine Countermeasures at the time, right? And I was the EX-8 platoon commander. And now you'll know it as Mark 8. Yeah. So this was the marine mammals being used with low visible technology, right? And I mean, low visible.
Yeah.
And we employed them to do the search and other things, right, in the VSW zone. The platoon, we had like 20, 24.
Oh, wow.
And SWIC, I had SWIC members, I had SEALs, we had EOD, and we had Woody Carr.
Yeah.
Woody Carr was my chief. The only way to keep those pirates and those professionals in check, man. He was a great leader in that very unique. So we went through fleet acceptance, which is not easy. And so VSW became Naval Special Clearance Team 1, which now let me connect the dot. I was the EXA platoon commander, and then I fleeted up to the OPSO as operations. And I was part of the early planning, right, for OIF.
Okay.
Only my boss and I were read in on what they were thinking of doing with this unit. And so I was working with counterparts back in 5th Fleet to come up with the CONOPS of how this system could be used.
Right.
Which it was. It was used to kind of a port breakout, so to speak.
Okay.
In Qasar, not a port break-in.
Yeah.
Right? So they cleared, the port and other things. And so VSW, then from there I go to EOD Group 1. I was the N7 readiness, got it. And then that transitioned to CTF 56.
Okay.
So I was on the original 56, I was plans, and then I was the ops.
Yeah.
So I went over and planned the op early. I went in January, and I think we stepped off a couple months later. We're in Qasar. Now I got to run the thing.
Right.
What an experience that was, right? Qasar. And 56 was a very small element, but we had 800 multinational forces under CTF 56. We had the 17th Port and Maritime. They were a group of British, and their job was stevedores, crane operators, railroads, warehousing, right? They operate ports.
Yeah.
So that's what they did. EOD, we had to clear the port of all the IDs, UXO, NSCT-1, cleared the underwater. We had to salvage assets. There was a lot of salvage. They opened up the seacocks, put a lot of tonnage on the bottom to keep ships from being able to tie up.
Okay.
So salvage divers, the heavy salvage divers, not the light. George Byford. So heavy salvage. So their job was to, find and fix and lift heavy things.
Yeah.
So 800 of these people were falling under, right, our task force. Yeah.
With working, having already worked with Australians, so another nation, right? Yeah. Did that help working with all of these, like understanding that there are differences? Because I think that's what I see usually a lot of times with people who don't do a lot of exercises and then have to go work with somebody else. It's a learning curve. Even if they speak English, even if they use majority of the same words, the way they talk, the way they do things is different. Did that help?
Man, so true. And I think we have lost the opportunity, not the ability, the opportunity in our bilat exercise, because we have not done bilats in 20 years.
Yeah.
We've been busy doing other things, right? So to your point, absolutely. So my, participation, when I say I was an operator on CDT-3, right? I knew the lingo, and there is a different lingo.
Yeah.
I knew their tactics and policies. I knew, when I say I knew, I had a good understanding of what was important to the Australians nationally, right? There's other things you're thinking about.
Right.
Like, hey, we want to do that. Like they did the Al-Fa. They did some really pretty dangerous work. They went on the Al-Fa side, or the other side of the river, close to a 4-letter state we can't name, with an I and an N, right? And they were up there clearing, that side. And so, but that was important to the team and for their objectives, right? They have operational strategic objectives, and you got to allow them that opportunity and work with them. So, And yeah, so I think it did help out. I knew some of the senior officers at the time, and that was also very beneficial. They knew me, I knew them.
Right.
So that helped. Yeah, you got to have that relationship. Building international relations is one of the responsibilities, right, of every member in uniform, especially in the senior ranks, enlisted and officer.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I've noticed that being in Guam, that's where it happened the most, but just going to different countries here and there. And after a while, not just in the, you build relationships that, and that is, we've talked about it just this morning, but building those relationships is what allows you to do things that you may not have been able to do otherwise, especially when you're integrating with other countries. But even take it all the way down to doing the bare bones basic, the things that the E4, E5 are tasked with, which is just doing courses in a SME and learning that if you are working with somebody who doesn't speak English, right, you can't talk for an hour and then have the translator speak. It's such a basic thing, but working at those smaller levels first, and then building up, you get relationships, you learn how to talk, you learn what their strategic plans are, and
limitations.
Yes. Right. Yes.
I've seen this before where I'll give it an example. So, clearance diving team 3, the clearance divers one of their specialties is clearing things underwater, right? Hello.
Weird.
Well, they use jack stays, right? Okay. If anybody ever seen a jack stay, it looks simple, but man, right? You're laying 1,000 meters of 9mm line out with 40-pound rates, and they got a tray, and they got this system, right? And they're laying it out. And so they lay out, we were underwater clearing 1,000 by 1,000. No, we would do 1,000 long by 200 meters wide. Okay, that's the odds. I mean, that no problem. Now the U.S. wasn't used to how to do that, right? Yeah. So we would lay out the jack stay. We would say, hey, take this portion of it, and after time, they got it down, right? But those are the interoperabilities, right? We didn't have time to teach, but we laid out the jack stay. That's your grid. We're going to go over and do that because we needed some offset in case we came across underwater mines or an inadvertent explosion, right?
Makes sense.
So,
that could get bad.
You don't be too close to it. Right. So interoperability, you're absolutely right, and working together.
Yeah. So while you were at 56 and stand that up, where'd you go from there? How'd that end up working out?
Can I?
Absolutely.
Viewers, and so I don't know if you can see it. So this is Fortune Favors Boldness, right? It is by Admiral Barry Costello, and Admiral Costello is the head of the Naval Task Force, essentially, for all things OIF. This is OIF 1 and 03. And Admiral Costello mentions, we're throughout this book. When I say we, because this is a story of we. It's Naval Special Clearance Team 1, CTF 56, small detachments on patrol boats that intercepted suicide boats. Yeah, right? They're all in here, and I think it's an amazing story because EOD matters.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely,
and we do some incredible things. I don't see some photos there, but it's a great story. I served on his staff. And what an experience that was. I was in his wardroom for the plans, and I'd sneak into his wardroom. No joke. I'd sneak into, when I say sneak, I was invited, sir. But I literally got midnight. I'm making a peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah.
Pops the door open. There he is, Admiral Costello. Right?
Hey, sir.
Hello, sir. And he goes, sit down. I want you to walk the dog. He was infamous for this. And you'll hear me say it occasionally. I said, walk the dog. I said, sir, I didn't bring any dogs. Right. He goes, I want you to tell me what you think, Lieutenant. Right. I was lieutenant. And I said, well, here's what I think. And facts, assumptions. You're just not, gaming this.
Yeah.
Because we were planning how to carve up the port of Umm
Okay.
Because I had the VSW experience. I had a very unique perspective. And now I got the land side. And we had to, so 56 carved up and did the land side, and NSCT did the underwater side. So I said, sir, these are how I see how we're going to carve up the pie. That's how we're going to get after it. And we had 72 hours.
Yeah.
Right. Before the phone call came. And it's in this. Who the phone call was? It was Rumsfeld.
Yeah.
Called Keating. Okay. How come the port is not open? No, he said, have the port open in 72 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we need to get the Galahad in for humanitarian relief. Right. 72 hours. Right. And what a level of effort by all members of Australians, Brits, US, you name it.
Yeah.
Right. Couldn't have been done singularly. And so there's a great story in there. If you're up to it, you should have a read.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Something that kind of occurred to me as we were talking, and I know we were talking before and talking about just what's kind of happening right now, which is not a lot, right? But throughout your career, right, when I look at the years, there were times of war times and conflict, right? And then there are peacetime or downtime, I guess you could kind of say. This is going to sound like a weird question, and I'm going to ask it this way because I'm pretty sure I know the answer, right?
Okay.
Before you got to 56, right? Before 56 was stood up, and you were in that kind of down period before there, did you know that you were going to be asked to go to 56 and do any of this stuff, right? I didn't think you did, right? So with that being said, the things that allowed you to be successful in doing what you didn't know you were going to be asked, right? Because we don't, and the reason why I ask it this way is we're in that time period where there's a lot of things that could happen in the future, right? None of us know which one's going to, right? And if somebody does, they haven't told the rest of us. But the question is, what allowed you to be successful? Because I feel like that's something that a lot of us kind of know, whether we acknowledge it or not, right? And that because we're in that period right now, before the next conflict, before the next war. So what would you say were some of the things that allowed you to be successful?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because here's part of the answer is nobody chooses the time of conflict.
Right.
Right. I mean, recent experience. We just left Afghanistan, and now we're in Eastern Europe, I'll call it, because it's not just one country.
Right.
It's all of Eastern Europe. So, and that shift happened, in 6 months?
Yeah.
Right? Think about it. So nobody gets a vote on when is convenient to go to war.
Exactly.
And that's what readiness is all about. So part of, I think, my perspective is how, we were ready for 56. And by the way, CTF 56 never existed. It was in a couple of, war plans or conceptually, but, and I'll call them out, John Wood and Ted Lucas and a few others really championed the fact that, we're naval special operations. Okay. We're not just EOD,
right?
Salvage. And, we had all these other hosts of skills, and now NECC was a product of that.
Yeah.
Right. I helped write part of what NECC is, right? Where, we were consolidating EOD, combat camera, CBs was a bit of a, push-pull.
Yeah.
Right. But it's salvage. Okay. So we're tucking it all in because the Navy needed not EOD, they needed the bigger Naval Special Operations. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's important. I don't think many of us understand how that came to fruition. And so, I was part of that, authoring of that, now NECC. But getting back to CT 56, never existed, never did that, been there, done that. And I got fragged out. So Simons, go out there and see what's going on. Got read in. I called the boss. I said, boss, this is happening.
Yeah.
That's all I could say. This is going to happen. Right. So get things ready. So on that, it is one, certainly expertise. You got to know your trade craft. You got to know the other areas of expertise that you don't know, or go get the right answer. Okay. Second is relations. Okay. I do believe that love me or like me, right? I work I did my best, right?
Yeah.
And I was EOD is my passion, my religion to some, right? You talk about that. Why do you fight? You don't fight for your flag. You fight for your shipmates.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that from personal experience, right? Being with being with a whole nother nation, I wasn't fighting for Australia, and I wasn't fighting for the U.S. I was fighting for my shipmates that I lived and worked by day after day, right? And that's, and I'm not sounding, anti-patriotic, right?
No.
But that's the core of it. And so relations matter because you're going to have to work with others in and out of uniform, right? And I'll talk a little bit about my experience as a transition.
Yeah.
Right? It was because of some good relations, right? That I had established credible relations, reputable. So your reputation's everything, right? Your trade craft, your expertise, your experience, all roll into, we're going to work with that person, that professional, and assist him, because I could have, and I did have quite a few roadblocks, right? As you're trying to stand up a whole new task force. So, and then you better have a sense of good humor.
Yeah.
You better have a sense of humor. Don't take it personally.
Right.
Get mad, get over it.
Yeah.
Get on with it. Right. So
I like what you said, you fight for your shipmates. Right. And I think when you said that, I think the way I've kind of looked at it is like, I joined to fight for my country, or I joined for patriotism reasons. Yeah. But once you join, okay. And I've actually, so what I tell a lot of guys is the first enlistment is patriotism. Everything after that is for me. And it sounds weird, but everything after that, it's because I still want to do it. Right. Not because of patriotism, honestly. Like, doesn't mean you're unpatriotic, but then I look at that and because there's a lot of times, and you talk to anybody who's done, a couple of years, and there's a bunch of things that you're asked to do that you may not necessarily agree with, but it's not a moral wrong. It doesn't go against the Constitution, but you're like, man, this seems kind of silly, but that you got a person to the left, to the right, the front, the back, and those are the guys you really care about. Yeah. And so that's why you actually go in and do the job.
Yeah. We EOD is truly a very unique profession. Yeah. Right? We're running toward danger, not away. Yep. Right. Unless you see me running, you better catch up. Right?
Exactly.
That's it. So it is, and you have to put a lot of trust and confidence, level of expertise. People ask me, why don't you dive? Why don't you parachute anymore? That's because when you do it with the best, right? It's just anticlimactic. So, and you trust them. Yeah. I mean, who's backing my parachute, right? Yeah. And so who's maintaining my Mark 16 rigs? You get all that. So there's a huge level of trust, professionalism, and that, brings that bond in pretty tight. There's a great competitive spirit in our community. Yeah. Especially in sports. I get smoked by my brother Kevin, and we're going to talk about Kevin in a minute. Yeah, he should be here. Yeah, right? If there was one person I'd say you want to interview, that would be Kevin Childrey. For those that know Kevin, right? One thing I'll say is that you're never gone, because people still remember you. Yeah, right? You're never dead until you're forgotten. And we'll never forget Kevin. He lives within us. He's got a great spirit. And we'll talk more about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Before we get there, one other thing with what you had said, the special operations versus EOD. And I didn't understand this. I didn't even think about it when I first came in, because I was more worried about, not getting fired and kicked out. I just needed to study and learn everything I needed to learn and hope that I learned enough. But the longer I've been in, the more I do realize it's interesting, because EOD is a job we do inside of the job that we do. True. Like, we have the EOD badge, but that is a portion of all the things we're asked to do. It's crazy how many different things, and how that it seems like every year we're asked to do something that we had no idea we were going to be asked to do before, and then we figure it out because we're problem solvers. It's what we do. Right. Yeah, it's interesting because the longer, especially in this time period where it's not just going over to Iraq, Afghanistan, doing the IEDs and this and that, right? We're asked to do so many different things right now.
And that brings up a good point. And I think you brought it up as we were talking before, is we need to put a new focus back onto the underwater tradecraft.
Yeah.
Okay. It's, for obvious reasons, it's not been the priority, but it is now. Right?
Yeah.
There's still a big threat. And what I would tell our listeners is this. We talked about skills and transferable skills in the private sector. Embrace autonomy. Embrace ROVs, UUVs, aerial drones, because they're effective if you use them correctly. They remove quite a bit of danger, so to speak. Certainly, they can dive to 300 feet and not need decompression.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of upside there, and I do believe some people are kind of still a little, not resistant, but just a little standoffish. I would say learn it. It's not hard. And learn to operate it, learn to maintain it, just like we do all our other gear. Because, I'm looking right now, there's several positions required at ROV and UUV companies.
Yeah.
So, that's just one thought as we refocus our communities.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, even though I, at one point, was one of those people resistant. I'll be honest. We're all friends here. I was talking recently about the way we approach problems, right? And most of the time we figure out from the solution, right? Like the end of the problem, how do I successfully do that, right? And then we work backwards. And part of that is when you know what the problem is and then you figure out, okay, how do I solve that problem? Then you work backwards and say, what tools do I have to be able to solve that problem? A similar thing to the way, I'm not going to get into it, but the way we determine what RSP to use, right? When we look in our pubs, it's the same kind of thing. But as we work that underwater problem, there's times where ROV may not be the answer, right? But then there's probably a lot more times now because of the safety factor where, hey, I can do it in a very similar amount of time and I'm significantly further away. And if something goes wrong, okay, it's money that's lost. It's not a person.
Right.
And that's always better.
And we'll talk about current Jeff, right?
Yeah.
And current Jeff, I'm in the AI business. Not artificial intelligence, but automated intelligence, robotics that does repeatable things.
Okay.
Right? So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. I am a co-founder of a startup called Unmanned. Unmanned Operations Group.
Okay.
And we are in the precision logistics space, and we used aerial drones to do that. And drones, aerial, has forever changed the battle space.
Yes.
Think about what's going on in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I listened to a podcast the other day, if you got 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And drones are my business. So I'm into the market research and what's going on. What are the trends, the new technologies, right? We're talking long range capabilities at a fraction of the cost.
Right.
And so there's a group in Eastern Europe that got together. Some are people that raise money, people that make them, people that operate them. And they've raised over $100 million on social media to build aerial drones to be used in Eastern Europe against their adversaries.
Yep.
Okay. And the guy he's a radio talk show.
Yeah.
Host, right. You can go on it. It's the Daily. You could, right. I'm not telling you anything out of school. And I was just fascinated, but it has forever changed the modern battle space. And we really need to get our arms around swarm technology, how to counter that, and certainly how to, in a commercial aspect, how to regulate drones for good, not bad. And there's a lot of goodness. I don't want to get too deep, but there is going to be highways in the sky.
Yeah.
NASA's going to run it. right? It's getting there. FAA is a little slow, but it's happening, right? Beyond visual line of sight. You're talking drones that could fly, 5, 10, 60 miles.
Yeah.
Right. And deliver goods and life-saving meds, food, right? Whatever. But, okay. So where are we at? Almost down my career path. Right?
Yeah.
I want to get to my transition because I think your listeners.
I think we're pretty much right there, right? You did 56.
So after Group 1, I go over to Training Unit 1 in San Diego in 2004 to 06. And that was kind of a mandate. So when we got back, we were doing a hot wash. And I got the tap. I said, Jeff, you need to get the troops ready for an IED fight. Because we were focused on MCM and a few others. But he said, you need to go back to the training unit and get us focused.
Yeah.
So I went over in 04 to 06. It started off as the XO, but I quickly, did the Heisman. Thank you, Ron, for taking over. Ron Zitzman. So I was their RT. I was a readiness officer. So it allowed me the opportunity to go get it done. And one of the things we had to do was get a training facility that would give us the full scope of range of operational, exercise options: desert, cold, underground, all that.
Yep.
Fire and move, shoot, communicate, and that for many is known as Darwin Wash.
Yeah.
Darwin Wash. So I got a story here. So here I am, show up the training unit. We had nothing like that.
Yeah.
Nothing. Right. So my counterpart, and I'll get to his name in a minute. My counterpart says, Jeff, I think I got what we need. So I go up to China Lake, and Todd takes me down a dirt road, need a kidney belt, and we're in a place called Darwin Wash. I'm like, what is this? It was a classified site because it's EMR. There's no EMR there. Right? There's no RADs going down there, and it was used for different projects. So it's out in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And he says, this is it. I said, what are we doing? There's a tie down for an air balloon, right?
Yeah.
Like, are you what? And he goes, I want you to go back and get us the money to build the range. And that was Gunner Todd DeVoe.
Okay.
Then Lieutenant Jeff Simons, get your ass back to DC. And I did. So I figured it out, right? I had no contract experience, but like all EOD techs, you learn, read, learn, and execute. So I wrote the urgent compelling, came up with a budget. I went back to DC and made the pitches, and we got $1 million up front,
nice.
Right? Just to get things going. And we built what is now the facility, the shed, right, where everybody lives and sleeps. Pretty small. Sorry, $1 million doesn't go far. But all of the rest of that, the mount towns and the roads and the demolition ranges, the targets, they have audiovisual up there now. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't been there, it is very replicant of what it's going to be to work with a FOB. You had the Hessians and all that, right? So you were in that environment, and three people I would call out here. One is Todd DeVoe, coming up with the vision, and certainly, again, relations. He had a good relation with the base. They gave us an MOU to use it, okay, and everything else is history. Mark Sanders really took the torch and ran with it. What we started, really took it forward, and then I was I won't say the money guy, but requirements. So but that's a good piece of it. Right? You got to have that triad. Yeah,
absolutely.
So so the training in it was where I capped my career at 26. I was an op-hold, right? I think I was telling you, 06, 04 to 06, we were losing a lot of techs.
Yeah.
Had 100 IEDs a day, going off in Iraq. And so I was on op-hold, couldn't get out. And not that I wanted to get out, but I wanted to get back in the fight. And so they were like, no, you're up for lieutenant commander. And I actually pulled my name from the list. I said, hey, I don't want to take anybody's spot. I actually went to Jim Bean. I said, Jim, take me off your, I had a pretty good ranking. I said, why don't you use it elsewhere? And believe it or not, I was selected lieutenant commander. So I exited. And this is a story I'd like to tell just real quick. So here I am the day of my retirement in '06, I forgot the actual month, but I was at Mobile Unit 3. Captain Dale Fleck, thank you, Dale, for letting me host it there. And that day of my retirement, we were burying Ed Koth, Edward Koth, and I recruited Ed into the program. He was a 31, or he was a PSI, I think we call it, PSI. Yep. So recruited him, and he actually came through the training unit. Right, he went to school, he comes back, and I remember as I was departing service, he was going through the training unit. Great story. Well, Ed deployed, and let's just say did not receive the adequate training to deal with then a new threat, homemade explosives.
Yeah.
Okay, we just didn't as a new threat, right?
Yep.
And so I committed at that point to say, you know what, if I could get back in the fight, if I could train another EOD tech, right, I'll do it. So I had a lot of options, right? I'm departing service. I'm getting, opportunities in the civilian sector, the private sector. And one offer came clear was to work with an organization that was focused, right, on the counter-ID fight. Had the reputation, had the back office, had all the contract vehicles, all of that to be able to get back in the fight, affect the outcome, which is a company that was started, a small business. I think Ken founded it in '03. Yeah. And this is a cool story. So this guy, Ken, I'll call him Ken for now. And so Ken gets out. Very successful Master Chief in the Navy, EOD, gets out, starts his company. I join in '06, and literally it just, skyrocketed, so to speak. The demand, if you will, for counter-IED training and counter-IED measures and all that was really we were just on the big upslide. You couldn't get enough EOD techs.
Right.
And so AT Solutions, right, founded by Ken Falk, was where I went. And like I said, I had no book of business, and so I linked up with an organization that had the foresight, the vision, obviously. So they had requirements, right? They had the vision, and they certainly had the funds to effect what was the largest counter-ID training program in the DoD, and that was JTAC, if you all remember that, the Joint Asymmetric Threat Awareness course. It was a big MTT thing. Yep. We went all over the world. We were training, Army, Marine Corps, Navy, from, I'll call it level 1 basic identification to, neutralization and exploitation. We were the kind of the CSI for IEDs at one point. We were in the labs. We had presence in the labs. We were doing exploitation training and techniques. Yeah, there at AT, and what a phenomenal experience. So I get out, learn the business, right? You're learning spreadsheets and, timesheets and, profit and loss. Yeah. Whoa. And let me just fast forward a little bit. So So 06 to 2009, I was here in San Diego, standing up this program, which is a pretty big program. And the business, Ken sells the business to a private equity firm, right? Back in DC and New York, big time, right? These private equity firm of $2 billion, right? We were just a small little company in their portfolio. And so we're graduating from small business to large, okay? And ain't no SOP for that. Right. So I get the nod from a wonderful man who's a great friend and mentor. His name is Dennis Kelly, and he became the CEO. So when Ken left, Dennis came the CEO, and he said, "Jeff, I want you to be my COO." It's like, why would you want me to do that, right? Well, first of all, there's a bet that you'll never leave San Diego and come to Washington, D.C. Yeah. By the way, Ken, you lost. But what a great opportunity, right? So I had to move the family. And we'll talk about sacrifice in a minute. Our families and our immediate family to moms and dads really really are sacrificed as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we're uplifting my family in my daughter's senior year of high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she
That's
still
tough.
calls me.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. Right. But opportunity knocked. We took it. I was the COO. And we went from, I was employee at 89, we went to 800 employees.
Wow.
Right. What a growth
That's pretty
trajectory. And we were doing, amazing things, not only in the DoD space, but the federal space, the intel community. And so from that point, the business was acquired by another big business, PAE.
Okay.
Pacific Architects and Engineering. People know that. So AT is now actually part of PAE. One other thing. So, right, as the XO, so to speak, I would go to board meetings in New York City.
Yeah.
And that's where the money was, by the way. That was CI Capital. So every quarter, my boss, Dennis, myself, and our CFO, Miss Debbie Ritchie, who taught me so much and was so patient. I really appreciated Debbie, but and talented, like beyond. So the three of us would schlep up to DC. Sorry, we'd go from DC to New York, and we'd have to meet with the board. And let me tell you who's on the board. Okay, it's kind of like a murder board.
Yeah.
Times 10. The Joint Chiefs of Staff was on the board.
Yeah.
The Secretary of Defense was on our board. Okay. And that was Bill Perry, Secretary Bill Perry, okay? Hugh Shelton, General Kern. You had the godfather of all stealth, Paul Kaminsky. I can go on, right? That's just the New York board. Then we had a DC board. And so, being in that presence and understanding what's important and what's on their minds.
Right.
From that perspective. I mean, you got the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And he's asking me, so, Jeff, what do you think the forecast is for our work in Afghanistan? I said, well, sir, and it was a murder board. I'd have binders of stuff, anticipating questions. And I would literally have at least some revenance of what certainly the question being relevant, kind of anticipated.
Yep.
But let me tell you this, if you don't know the answer in that group, sir, I'll get back to you.
Right.
I'm not sure. Never say I don't know. So, but I think I know where to get that answer. Mm-hmm. I will get back to you. And you do so, right? In a timely fashion. So what amazing experience. And that was my period from 06 to 15.
That's awesome. That is, that's something that you can take. And honestly, we should take and start very early, right? The getting in front of people that have way more. Yeah. A lot of times you get in front of boards like that and they know a good amount of the answers to the questions, right? And they just want to see, like, are you going to BS me, or are you going to give me the information that I need? Mm-hmm. Can I trust you, right? And then, because really in these spaces, trust is really what you want in somebody. And then if you get that, then you're like, okay, go and do all the things that I need you to do. But starting that early, starting that as a junior guy with, we do it in our different boards, our scuba boards, our whatever, and then you do the senior boards and the master boards. And then I think, going into, on this last deployment, briefing the admiral and, just different things going on. Yeah. And we had one come up and, this was kind of funny. It's a little bit embarrassing, but again, we're all friends here. So we had in our brief, level 1 exploitation. Mm-hmm. And I was like I looked at that right before we went in and I was like, what the F is that? Mm-hmm. Like, we just don't use that in our normal day. We do it in our normal day. We do it in our training. Right. But I was like, man, I haven't used this term in forever, because we're always thinking like the advanced side. And of course we get in there and we're briefing and we just like slide by that real quick. Mm-hmm. And I see him and he circles it and he doesn't say it right away. Yeah. And then he goes, and then come back to it. And he's like, I got a question. This level 1, what is that? And I was like, and I waited. Oh, I see. It was kind of in the same boat I was. Like, we both kind of just slid through that really quick. And it's like, oh, sir, I don't want to say, I forget exactly how I put it, but basically I was like, let me verify that what I think we're trying to say here is exactly what it is, and I'll get back to you. And then went downstairs, did that, and it's finding the right way to say that you don't know without saying you don't know. Because 90% of what we do is I need to know where to find it and try to, as time goes on, learn as much information about it as possible. But then you're not going to learn everything. You're not going to know everything, but being prepared and then knowing where to find it.
And if I may, just to hit that again, risk. So in uniform and out of uniform, you need to identify risk, right? Identify the causes. We do this as a natural occurrence, right? Risks. What are my risks? What am I doing? What's my objectives? How am I getting in and out? Okay. And one of the things I'll tell you is that at the time, AT was one of the few businesses that was authorized by the government to carry weapons.
Okay.
For our missions. When I say missions, training. Right? We were out doing missions, training, right? But we had large volumes of foreign nationals that we had to make sure they were safe, and right, we're out. We're in fobs, right, with razor wire around us. That's it. And we're training those people on the fob on the latest IED. I mean, we would turn around a first seen device and exploit it, replicate it, and physically replicate it in 72 hours.
That's awesome.
Because he needed to get that information out. So our teams would go out in some pretty austere places, and we would carry weapons. Now, how do you think your board of directors feels about that? And they sit on other boards of other companies that wouldn't touch that.
Right.
The 10-foot pole. The risk is too high. So silence, right? How are you as the COO going to mitigate that risk? Right. So, we had a plan, had some great operators around us, around me, and saying, yeah, this is how we're going to do it. It starts with training. So selection, training, right? Procedures, so to speak. When I say procedures, it ain't so to speak. How we get weapons in and out, ITAR compliant, yada, yada, transfer, you get all that. And, we never had an incident, maybe an accident. No, no, we never had an incident, accident. It turned out to be a very successful program, right? These things that we were doing, these programs turned out to be very successful. Obviously, our operators and others benefited by having that defense so that they could go out and do those missions out in some pretty austere places. So risk management in and out of uniform, that's a really big attribute that I think many in uniform don't recognize that they have when they leave service. Yeah.
So you were working on AT Solutions, doing the COO thing, and then
I got fired.
And that's why you're here.
I was fired. No. I convinced the new management team that they didn't need me to spend another winter. I did. No.
You just wanted to win the bet that you wouldn't stay here, but then you came back back. So smart.
So to your question, what happened, right? Well, obviously a successful exit. We were required, integrated, and I had a life choice. I could stay in the Beltway and do the Beltway thing, and that's a grind, by the way. That was a really tough run. When I say run, amazing experience. I'd never turn it down, but really tough. And one thing I'd like to talk about briefly is work-life balance.
Yeah.
I always hear this.
Is it possible?
Let me be very clear. The answer is no.
Agreed.
Okay. And let me just take 2 minutes to talk about
absolutely
work life, right? When you're working 16, 12 hours a day, just do the math. So 8 hours of sleep leaves you 4 hours. Well, guess what? And you're in DC, 2 of those 4 hours are consumed by mind-numbing commuting.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got 2 hours. What are you going to do with them? You're going to go to the gym? You're going to go see your kid? Or make up to your wife for being gone so much.
Right.
And so what I would say to those that are in that professional situation is you need to use your PTO, every ounce of it in a year. Don't bank it. Don't save it. take 2 days off in the middle of the week, 2 days off in the middle of the week, go take your kid to school, take your wife out to lunch, right? Or your spouse, excuse me. And, get a week or 2 off for vacation, like totally detach. Mm-hmm. And this is in and out of uniform, I would tell you.
Yeah.
Right. Even in uniform, you really have to discipline. It seemed to be kind of a, hey, I got, 90 days booked. I haven't taken, in 3 years, right? That we need to change that mentality, mm-hmm. right? And so I would keep track of that. I really would. I would see people banking too much leave in the business, and literally we would have periods within our programs that I'd say, we need to shut down ops. If you're going to take leave, it's right here. And we would do that. And our group presidents were really good about that, And so work-life balance, very difficult. Take your PTO, give back to your families until you get to a point, right, where I think I've achieved in my life a work-life balance, which is my 30-30 rule, 30-30-30, which is 30% work, right, which is USOG, Unmanned Systems Ops Group, right, startup business, whoa, and 30% giving back. So I do work with a local nonprofit, STEP, support the Enlisted Project, and also some work with the EOD Warrior Foundation. I was on the board, as you remember. I was the co-founder with the Wounded EOD Warrior Foundation, right, with Ken Falk and Julia, God bless them. And so we were co-founders, started it, and then, as you may recall, it combined with the I forgot what it was called, the EOD Memorial at the time. So the Wounded EOD Warrior Foundation and EOD Memorial Foundation combined, right, to the EOD Warrior Foundation. Yeah. What an amazing story, right? And the people and those that volunteer, the ambassadors, the staff, right, the leadership, the donors, right? Yeah. It is an amazing organization. I was fortunate to be a part of that. So that's my other 30. And then the other 30 is goofing off. Yeah. Right. It's my time. It's my hobby time. I've taken up a few new hobbies. I'm a beekeeper. Yeah. Learned how to beekeep. Nice. Yeah. Started an orchard. Right?
That's awesome.
A working orchard. Right. And I never did anything like that. Yeah. So I'm learning. Right. And then I think you were asking about what happened after you got fired. We came back to San Diego, and I owed it to our family. Yeah. Right? We moved 8 times in uniform, moved my daughter out in her senior year. Yeah. And I said, hey, where do we want to go? We had an opportunity. Where do you want to go? And we looked at all places, east and west. And we said, let's go back to San Diego. And the culture, the community, right, opportunity, and certainly the sunshine.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just, right. Sorry. After 5 years in DC. Okay. Sorry. So came back to San Diego in 15, relocated. And guess what? I went back to school. Yeah. So this is a kind of a unique story. So, I come back, it's June, July, and my boss, Dennis Kelly, said, Jeff, and he even offered me the opportunity while I was at COO, right, to get my master's. I did not have a B degree at the time. And this amazing on-the-job experience, though, running a company in the profit and loss sector, right? Jeez. So I'm so indebted to Dennis for that opportunity, and others, obviously, who, had the trust and confidence. Right. And so I go back to school. And I got accepted on a dean's exception. Oh, yeah? I was late, or I'm just getting back. I said, man, I got some time here. I'd really love to, go back and you should always be in some type of educational program. I don't care if it's a correspondence course or whatever. You should always be self-improving through education. Yeah. Right. So I got accepted to the USC. Nice. The Marshall School of Business. And dean's, I was late, right? I was late, but I had a GI Bill. I used it, right? So we'll take your money. Right. They did. I think they did. Anyway, what an amazing experience. So you got this OJT. Now I go to the academa, right? And I'm like, well, that makes sense. Yeah, I learned that, knew that, right? And so I went to school, back to school from 15 to 17. Okay. It was an executive MBA program. It's a little different, right? Because you're probably in the it's like a war college a little bit. You're in the, upper tiers of business.
Right.
So these are VPs, senior VPs of very large companies. Qualcomm.
Okay. Wow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Qualcomm, a lot of big pharmas companies, entertainment company, right? Walt Disney's executives from Walt Disney were in my sister class, so to speak, in LA. So I had three other classes that we would collaborate with. One was in LA, and the other one was in Shanghai.
Okay.
And guess what what international study we were focused on? China.
That makes sense.
Wow. I'm telling you what an education, what an insight. Okay. Not only was it our international study, right? We went there for 3 weeks.
Oh, that's cool.
And through USC, because there's a lot of alumni at USC, from USC in China. And we would go Bank of China. We'd go see automakers, right? We would go to various companies within China and learn about what they're doing, how do they do business, how business is done, right, so to speak, the culture, right, what's important to them, right? And again, what are the threats? What are like a SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? And so it was a real eye-opener to understand from this perspective, this academia, because they enabled us to have insights that not many will get.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going over there in uniform and talking to CEOs of private firms to understand business, not for anything nefarious.
Right.
So I went back to school and walked out a more enlightened person, so to speak, and the relations that you establish and the insights that your classmates now can give you.
Yeah.
For instance, I have a good classmate. He works in the chemical industry. He'll tell you exactly what the price of fuel is going to be, or the price of something, because he sells the chemical.
Yeah.
Right, so
that's awesome. Getting those connections, you talked about it in uniform, but it's all over the place. You need connections and relationships, probably a better word, not just connections, but relationships with people. So let's see. Actually, one of the things you wrote down on the thing was staying relevant. I think that kind of you kind of brought up a portion of staying relevant with just continuing education in some form or another. But then, it makes sense in the EOD realm. It's easy to see in the EOD realm, I think, staying relevant, because we see it with when active duty or not, and somebody continually uses, well, this is what I used to do. Right. And you're like, but now we have a new tool. We have a new whatever. So staying up on how things are done and the new tools, again, going to here's the problem that I have. Here's the solution. Here's how to solve that problem. Now, what do I have to do that with, staying relevant? But on the outside, staying relevant, have you found it harder, easier, or basically the same to stay relevant in the different spaces, working, like with UOG, I feel like there's the civilian portion of that, but I feel like could be a tie into the military portion of that as well. Yeah. Is it easier, harder, basically the same as when you were active duty?
Great question, right? Because part of it is you have to have the discipline to be relevant. Okay. And so an example is, I had good experience at underwater autonomy, right? With UUVs and ROVs in uniform, used the Remus, right? What was the ROV? Video Ray, and CBOT, right? And CBOTics, yeah. So I wasn't, when I say an expert, but I knew how they operated. Certainly went through enough sonar, or imagery to mine-like or non-mine-like. So had good experience, but because that was our job, right? So you could immerse yourself in it. But now it's like going back to school.
Yeah.
Right. It takes discipline, right? It really takes a want to be relevant. So now I'm in the, I'll call it, well, it's not calling it, it's AI, but I'm in the drone space, right? And it's a daily one. I'm up, I'm reading what's happening in, news. I'm reading my newspaper, which are all these different feeds of information, deciphering it, right? Who's getting funded, who's not getting funded, right? What's the new regulations and executive orders that are tightening screws on any work with Asian countries? So the U.S. drone companies like ourselves had to pivot to new supply sources other than Asia. Okay. Yeah. So you have to maintain relevancy to stay up with what's going on.
Right.
And so it's a matter of discipline. You need some passion.
Yeah.
You got to want to know, because I'm not interested in, I'm not interested in cooking. Right? My wife is, God bless her, but I'm not, right? So you have to have some of that passion, something that's going to drive you. It's a daily one. If you're going to be relevant, stay educated. Relevancy is, like I said, there's a lot of hosts of information flow. It used to be off a newspaper. Yeah. Right? But now we have so many sources to include social media.
Yep.
Okay. Pros and cons to that.
No, that's good. That makes sense. I like the discipline portion, because like sometimes you don't think about that, because not every day you wake up are you motivated to do everything that you have to do. And that's where the discipline comes in. On the days that you're motivated, discipline doesn't matter because you don't need it, right? But on the days that you're not,
right.
Something that I do want to go in and talk about is what you got here. I know you said you worked with children, before, it's interesting when you asked me if I knew him, I never knew him, but, I know how influential and how good of a person, and I'm separating the two for a specific reason, how good of a person he was, and as well, how great of an EOD presence he had, because there's a ton of people that bring his name up, and in all various aspects. So I'd love for you to tell your
thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it. So I'm not sure where the camera's pointed. Am I facing this way or that way?
Either one. Either one.
So first and foremost, Kevin Childry. For those that remember, maybe a semblance. No, this guy always had the effervescent smile, right? He said he's from Simi Valley, but he was from Happyville, California, right? Kevin always had this infectious smile, such an engaging presence, right? When you were in his presence, he was always engaged, right? He had that amazing ability to make you the person in the room, so to speak, right? Obviously, I think Kevin was a whole tech too. Yeah. Right, Kevin? So LDO, right? He was the year after myself, right? So he was selected in, give me a minute, I'm dating myself, 97, I believe it was. Okay. If I have that wrong, I apologize. But year after I was selected, and, same path, right? Training units, mobile units, operations, got it. And so Kevin had this amazing ability to inspire people to do things that they didn't want to do, right? They didn't want to do it, Kevin. And one of the things I'll hold up, and for those that remember the Undefeated. So the Undefeated was a charity. When I say charity, it was a bike ride, a 2-day bike ride from LA to San Diego that raised funds for various nonprofits, not just the EOD Warrior Foundation, which was a big recipient. Yeah. Okay. But he spread the love, so to speak. And so the Undefeated started off very small, and then it got really big. Yeah. And the driving force beyond others, and I apologize if I don't get everybody's name involved in this, but he was a big driving force behind this. And so the Undefeated, for those who remember, and, kudos to Vince Martinez, who I think has, picked up the torch with those bike rides. We can go online. Maybe you could put a link to some of these.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's one up at the Tackett Vineyards here in November, but he does them all over, right? He's like the ambassador for what I consider the Legacy Undefeated, which was started by Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Definitely like send me all the links you got and I'll make sure that they get in the descriptions because that'd be great.
So, and he's one of the people I wish were here.
Yeah.
You should be, interviewing because he certainly touched a lot of lives and inspired others to do things like you said they want to do. No, really did. I mean, he really impacted so many lives through raising funds that did so many good things for families, EOD warrior families.
Yeah. It's interesting. I know you're a little bit joking about doing things you don't want to do, but that's actually something that I've heard. I can't remember the specific thing, and it's the thing about getting people to do things that they don't necessarily want to do, right? Is being able to frame it in a way that now actually matters and they understand and now they are motivated. So it's not because again, that's a thing that I've heard from him from a couple different people is that framing things in a way that motivates you, that if without that conversation, I'm not interested in this. And I haven't heard the thing that makes me interested in this at all. Don't care about it. Yeah. And then the conversation and now you're like, I want to get that done. Yeah. Yeah.
And if I may, because it's a characteristic trait that you need both in and out of uniform.
Yes.
When you're in uniform, it's pretty simple. Hey, Simons, suit up. You're going down range. Okay. Right. When you're in this, private sector, you're right. You have to frame it. You have to inspire people collectively to be moving in the right direction for the right purpose. Right. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
And some people have it. Some people don't. Some people need to work at it.
Yeah.
Right. They have to work at it. So, but that's a trait that Kevin certainly had. The other one he had?
What?
He had the ability to talk the leg off a chair.
Yeah.
I'd be sitting there looking at him. I'm like, all of a sudden I'd fall over. I'm like, where did I go? He goes, I just took it from it because I needed it. Right. So
that's awesome.
So again, another great attribute that certainly Kevin has. I would say it's a trait that you may want to explore, right?
Yeah.
You have a joke or two, right? But at the end of the day, it's about authenticity.
Right.
Because people could see right through you.
Absolutely.
Right? Authenticity and reputation.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in this community, you can see when it's just, As we kind of get ready to close out, is there anything, I want to, make sure that we didn't miss anything that you wanted to talk about. But,
please.
And then wanted to, what I ask everybody is there anything that you would like to leave with, those watching? Yeah,
I appreciate that. So maybe the two things I would leave with is our community of professionals, and I'm speaking about EOD, right? Again, we're a very unique profession. We develop very unique traits and experiences and skills. Yeah. I mean, like none other. And like I said, it's not a matter if, it's when we transition to the, private sector. And for some, that's pretty tough.
Yeah.
And I think some of the challenges that our shipmates, if I can use that term, encompassing for all services, is that, sometimes as we transition, we lose our passion, right? Our mission and our purpose. And that's where I think some of our fallen have fallen, unfortunately, into that, I won't call it darkness, but it's that realm of what's my purpose now? I used to have a parking spot. I don't, right? Yeah. I used to have a paycheck. I have to apply for, a new job every 3 years. Mm-hmm. So it is a challenge. There is a lot of assistance out there, right? Again, it goes back to discipline. You got to do the work, but there's a lot of portholes, the EOD Warrior Foundation, the Hero Foundation, There's several others. I know I don't have them all, but seek those assistances and those networks. The other thing I say is, we talked about it again. Our professionals develop we do some amazing things. Okay. And as we were talking, think about entrepreneurship, right? Yeah. People get out of uniform and they start a business.
Yeah.
And it ain't easy. Trust me, right? As a startup, I'm telling you, it's different than walking into a functioning organization like AT, right? So entrepreneurs, I'm not going to get them all, but there are countless, and I repeat, countless stories, success stories of people from the EOD communities, special ops, departing service and starting a business.
Yeah.
Okay? Ken Falk is one, right? R3 is one. There's several others. And again, I'm not being parochial here, but so there's entrepreneurs in our community, inventors, right? I didn't realize this, but I have my name on 5 patents.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Right? Not that I develop them, right? But I work with the team and I'm an operator. I'm like, hey, have we thought about this? This is how we're going to use it, And so working with the team, we've developed 5 patents. So you have innovators. I'm just giving some examples. There's a lot of innovation in our community because we're dealing with real-time threats.
Yeah.
It's always emerging. Like I said, drones have forever changed the battle space of modern warfare. Think about what's going on in Eastern Europe.
Yep.
So innovation, political. We have three EOD techs in the House of Congress.
Yep.
Think about
That's right.
Maybe president. No. Yes. All right. Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
Navy, at least, right? But we have some really amazingly gifted statespeople, right, that understand the big picture, right, and can represent that. And I would just say that's a really hard profession. We need more of them. And then lastly, the amazing things this community does is giving back. Think about all of the wonderful nonprofits, right? The Warrior Foundations. There's the Naval Special Ops Foundation.
Yep.
Again, a lot of selfless dedication to go out there and to inspire others, right?
Yeah.
To support those organizations that are doing good things. So again, there is all these wonderful, I'll call categories of opportunity that I would encourage our listeners to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you bringing all that up because that's something that we should constantly think about. Whether you just came in, and even if you think you're going to do 20 years, start looking for those things at the beginning. There's opportunities that you can build those relationships, and then give people a way to keep a parking spot.
Yeah, you're right.
And
you're right.
Keep that purpose. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing.
Thanks so much.
It's been awesome.
It's been wonderful. I really appreciate the opportunity. And to all of our listeners, God bless, be safe, and hug an EOD tech.
Yeah. All right.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Echo Oscar Delta podcast, where we talk to Navy EOD techs and hear the stories that they want to share.